Delmarva Today with Don Rush.
The continued shelling by Israel has brought continuing concerns about the humanitarian situation in the Gaza Strip. You're listening to Delmarva Today. This is Don Rush. Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu says he expects this to be a long war after the brutal attack by Hamas along the border, which left over 1,000 Israelis dead. Meanwhile, President Biden went to Israel this week, pledging U.S. support, but also cautioning against reoccupation of the Gaza Strip. We turn to Muqtedar Khan, a professor at the University of Delaware, to talk about the regional implications of this latest conflict. Welcome to the program.
Thank you very much for having me, Don.
So, well, first of all, where do you see us at this point in time with the Israelis continuing to shell? They have not launched a ground invasion. Where are we with this conflict, do you think?
Well, if you listen to the Prime Minister of Israel, it appears that this is just the beginning of the conflict, and you can anticipate a ground assault, perhaps even occupation of Gaza. If he's determined to eliminate Hamas, and by, I guess, eliminate Hamas, he means killing all people who are associated with Hamas, and I guess those in the military wing as well as those in the political wing, then they will simply have to go and occupy Gaza and hunt them down door to door and kill them one by one. It's going to take a long time because there are tunnels there, there are hiding places there. Perhaps they don't know who all belong to Hamas. And I think with every killing, there will be new people willing to join. There is absolutely no hope for the young in Gaza. They have nowhere to go. They don't have any future. Unemployment is at 80%. Israel allows only very limited permits for people to work. And now the power has been cut off, water has been cut off, food has been cut off, hospitals have been destroyed. So I guess the Gazans have nothing to live for, and as Israel kills more and more of their people, they will probably continue to join. I expect it to go on forever. And if the whole goal is, let's say that Israel does achieve its goal and kills all the leaders and important people in Hamas, so then what happens? Who will govern Gaza? 2.2 million people. There's a blockade there for the last 16 years. Nothing goes in, nothing comes out. So will Israel govern it, or will they import leaders from the West Bank? And will Mahmoud Abbas, who can barely do anything, manage to control Gaza? So there are lots of questions about this issue, and it's not very clear. What is also interesting is that many days have passed since Netanyahu has threatened to go into Gaza, but he has not gone into Gaza. He's just bombing it, and there have been thousands and thousands of casualties. Close to, I guess by now 4,000. The last number I checked was 3,300. People are dead in Gaza. 1/3 of them are children. This is a war against children, apparently. Even when Hamas attacked Israel, they targeted and killed children, and now Israel has killed more than 1,000 children. So I'm not very sure, unless at some point there is a call for ceasefire on humanitarian grounds. So the situation is just unbelievable. But unfortunately, Don, I am reluctant and hesitant and sad to say that we have a president who seems to be like a warmonger. I mean, he's more interested in prolonging wars than ending wars. Take the case of Ukraine. The United States, in more than 18 months, has not started a single peace process between Ukraine and Russia, and has just been giving aid and money and dollars and weapons to Ukraine, without which this war would not go on and on and on for such a long time. And all that war is doing is, yes, it's weakening Russia, depleting its military resources, but also completely destroying Ukraine and killing Ukrainians. And since this war has started, the President of the United States has never mentioned the peace process, has never mentioned the two-state solution, which he has done nothing to move forward on. But on the contrary, he has talked about war, sending 2 aircraft carriers to the region, threatening other nations to stay out of it, pending their preparation of sending 2,000 American troops. I don't know where they are going to go and what their role is going to be in the Middle East. On top of that, he's been sending ammunition and weapons to Israel. So all the mayhem that Israel is causing in Gaza with so many civilians, the United States is culpable for all the war crimes that are being committed. And not only that, I just want to draw your listeners' attention to a memo that the State Department sent out. And the memo directed senior members of the State Department not to use words like de-escalation and ceasefire, into violence and bloodshed, and restoring calm. They have been forbidden to use words like this. And every time Biden talks to Netanyahu, the State Department, or some spokesman, makes it a point to attract the media's attention to the fact that he has not called for restraint. He is now, at least in the 60 Minutes interview and subsequently when he was in Israel, just said that, be careful, don't kill too many civilians, etc. But he's standing behind Israel and whatever it does. Even on the hospital issue, he seems to be so sure that it was Israel, while other European countries are calling for investigations and more in-depth analysis of what really happened. It reminded me of how last week he told Jewish leaders in America that he had seen photographs of the children that Hamas had beheaded, and then the White House clarified that neither Mr. Biden had seen any photographs, nor the White House, nor the U.S. government. So I'm not very happy with the role the president is playing. Yes, he's standing firmly with Israel. I'm sure there are lots of Americans happy with that. His message of ironclad support is apparent now. No matter what Israel does, he's going to be there. But it's a failure of his foreign policy. What's going to happen to the Abrahamic Accords after this war? The anger is so severe in the Arab world that they are shunning him. He was supposed to have a summit in Amman with the King of Jordan, the President of Egypt, and Mahmoud Abbas, the Palestinian Authority leader, president. All of them, that meeting was canceled. No one is willing to meet with him. Blinken went to Riyadh, and MBS made him wait for several hours before he met with him. So the United States' relations with the rest of the Middle East is crumbling. Not only that, but in the global south, especially in many African and Asian countries, there is mounting anger at what the U.S. is doing. Rather than restraining Israel, they are facilitating Israel's vengeance, which is gone beyond. I don't know what to say, like how many thousands of people have to be killed. What Hamas did was horrible. It was a terrorist attack. But Hamas is a terrorist organization. So in retaliation, at least Rishi Sunak called out and told Israel that they had to, whatever they do in response, they had to take care of international law. And one more point, Don, the United States has vetoed the United Nations Security Council resolution which was calling for a ceasefire. So apparently our president doesn't want a ceasefire. He wants this war to go on.
Let me ask you this. In terms of Hamas, it was probably the most striking attack that they have had in years, much different than, say, for instance, the usual shelling back and forth. Also fairly gruesome. What did one expect with that kind of assault? I mean, after all, Israelis, for instance, unite whenever there is an attack, whether the left or right. And in this particular case, some particular Jewish leaders here just looking at this as just another pogrom. That's the term that they use. This is vicious. Whatever you try to do in terms of resolution, the fact that Hamas took this action, one, why do you think they did? I mean, such an extreme use of force and use of brutality. On the one hand, what did they expect to gain out of it? Where is this coming from?
Well, there are two or three things. First of all, Hamas is not like a proper government. It doesn't have press conferences where people can ask these questions of them. So we can speculate and make educated guesses as to what the motivation was. Number one, you have to recognize that Gaza has been under 16 years of blockade. Nothing can go in, nothing can come out, 80% of unemployment. It's been living in really horrendous circumstances, and there has been no progress on the peace process. In West Bank, too, in this year alone, over 200 Palestinians have been killed, and on a daily basis, Israel is expanding settlements with U.S. support, and there is no progress on the peace process at all. So there is a deep-seated suffering and anger and frustration in the Palestinian world altogether. The second thing is that the expansion of the Abrahamic Accords, there was such a rapid movement of normalization of relations between Saudi Arabia and Israel, pushed by Joe Biden. Even as people were objecting to the elimination of democracy that Netanyahu was attempting in Israel by eliminating the checks and balances between the executive and the judiciary, the United States was indulging in hectic diplomacy, sending Blinken and Jake Sullivan to Saudi Arabia to basically advance Israeli interests. So the U.S. is working really hard and fast. I guess the goal was to give Joe Biden some victory that he can brag about in his election campaign in next year. So my guess is that the Palestinians felt that the Abrahamic Accords are excluding them. Arabs are making peace. The initial Saudi plan for peace was to create a two-state solution in exchange for a comprehensive peace with the Arab world. But what Donald Trump started was to exclude the Palestinians and bring about a comprehensive peace between Arab states and Israel without making any concessions to the Palestinians. In fact, Don, 3 or 4 days before, like sometime 1st or 2nd or 3rd of October, 20 senators from the Democratic Party wrote a letter to Joe Biden saying that they would not support a treaty between Israel and Saudi Arabia in the Senate unless there were concessions made for the Palestinians, some movement towards a Palestinian state. So, but there was no response by the Biden administration. They were just moving fast and trying to seal the deal with Saudi Arabia. And I think Hamas felt that this was the only way that they could prevent the Abrahamic Accords from completely excluding them. Biden has completely turned away from the Middle East. Now this attack brings the Middle East back into center fold. It has altered the geopolitics. The positive relations that the United States has with the Middle East is now in jeopardy. You will find that China is moving forward. Repeatedly, every statement that China issues talks about the importance of the two-state solution, which means that China's soft power in the Muslim and the Middle East world is going to grow. So this is not a good thing. So what Hamas did was a very cruel and brutal and inhuman action for which all of them deserve to be punished. But from a geopolitical perspective, and if you look at the context, look, history doesn't begin on October 7th. Okay, the history has been going on. This occupation has been going on for 75 years, 50 years of occupation of West Bank and Gaza. The conflict has been on for so long, and there are thousands and thousands of Palestinian refugees. So my guess is that Hamas did this to basically destroy the peace process. So this is not just an attack on Israel, but this is also an attack on Saudi Arabia's ambitions and Mohammed bin Salman's plans for a future Middle East. What does this do to IMEC, the India, Middle East, European corridor, which was announced by Narendra Modi and Joe Biden at the G20 summit? What does it do for the Abrahamic Accords? The anger in the Arab world is unbelievable at the moment. So we are seeing a complete topsy-turvy world from what we had last month. And it's going to get more ugly. Let me tell you that Israel has attacked Gaza many, many times. We have witnessed this. Hamas does something horrible, terrorist attacks, and then Israel retaliates, and Islamic Jihad does something, and Israel retaliates. None of them have brought security or peace to the region. So I'm not expecting that whatever Israel does for whatever period of time is going to result in peace or security, unless you're saying it kills all people in Gaza, so there's nobody left in Gaza to cause trouble. That's an entirely unimaginable and unthinkable situation. So if you look at a situation where Israel goes and destroys, it's like the Afghanistan situation. The U.S. spent 20 years in Afghanistan, and at the end of that, we handed over billions of dollars worth of weapons and Afghanistan to the Taliban. So the Taliban back are in charge. And I will not be surprised that if next year, or whenever Israel's assault ends, you will see Hamas back in charge because the Palestinian Authority doesn't really exist. It controls very little. It has very little governing capacity. And so there will be a huge governing hole and vacuum in Gaza. And we don't know how that is going to do. Plus, I'm also afraid that there is a lot of frustration and anger in the Arab world, and I don't know how that anger is going to come out. These dictators and monarchs in the Middle East, kings and presidents, authoritarian presidents, by the way, they're all our friends, and we give money to Sisi, close to $1 billion a year. But these brutal dictators, they are afraid. The reason why they're not meeting with President Biden, especially after the attack on the Gaza hospital, is because they are afraid of the anger on their streets. They do not want to be seen hanging around with Joe Biden, the only U.S. president who went to Israel during wartime.
Do you think that? Let me ask you this: do you think that Hamas is so entrenched in Gaza that even if they wipe out the leadership that happens to be there, and I understand there's leadership outside of Gaza itself that's connected to Hamas, you think that they're so entrenched that no matter what the Israelis do, that they will essentially be back?
See, in 2005, we had an election which was pushed heavily by the Bush administration. In fact, I remember advising the administration, along with lots of academics and other experts, not to hold this election, and we predicted that Hamas would win, and it won. So as far back as 2005, you could see there was a lot of public support for Hamas. But you're right, the Hamas leadership lives abroad, some in Qatar and other places, and they are pretty safe. So what you're doing is you're going to be killing the mid-level people who are based in Gaza and who do this stuff. I don't even know whether they will be able to actually find everybody. I don't know. After what happened on October 7th, I have very little confidence that Israeli intelligence and Western intelligence have a pretty good idea of what is happening inside Gaza. Look at the amount of rockets they have fired on, 5,000 rockets. Where did they come from? Where did they come from while there was this blockade? Are they manufacturing them in Gaza? Are they being smuggled in? And so what's happening to all the 5 eyes and the 7 eyes and the 10 eyes and all this fancy technology and drones, intelligence, the Mossad's legendary capabilities of gathering intelligence? They were completely surprised. And that kind of an assault that they launched could not have happened without some kind of practice. In fact, there are reports that the Hamas was practicing this in open sight, and the Israelis were watching it, and they didn't expect Hamas to do it. So partly hubris and partly failure of intelligence. So if the intelligence on Hamas is so poor that they could not anticipate and preempt this attack, there's another debate going on about how Egypt had warned Israel 3 days before the attack that there would be an attack, and nothing was done. But if the intelligence is so poor, then how is this switch off? I think that there is a core group of people inside Gaza who have handled these operations. They have prepared these people, United Islamic Jihad and Hamas, to work together on this particular project, while Hamas pretended for a while that it was undermining Islamic Jihad. And what Hamas was telling Israel and others in the world was, look, we have done nothing in the past long time. All we are doing is struggling to curtail Islamic Jihad, while it was preparing this attack. So Hamas's capabilities there must be a core group of people who are reasonably competent to put together a plan like this and do it. The U.S. intelligence, including President Biden, in his interview, I think, in one of his interviews, there are 3 or 4 public statements, he has said very clearly that the U.S. does not have intelligence that shows that Iran was directly involved in this operation and attack. So if Iran was not involved directly in this attack, that means Hamas did it on its own, and that should be very, very scary about the capabilities of Hamas. So yes, you can kill people, and most of the people who are dying seem to be children, 1/3 of them women, who just makes anger. So there are young kids who are trying to apply for SAT and go to other universities which they can't. They have no other option. With death in the family, the father dead, the house destroyed, younger brother dead, son dead, they will gravitate towards the only place that they have, which is Hamas. So I'm not sure that just killing a few thousand people is going to solve this problem. The solution is very simple, that you do have to seriously move on the two-state solution. Otherwise, this thing is going to keep happening periodically. And the intensity and the scale is increasing. This time, the public opinion in the West seems to have coalesced in such a way that it is standing behind Israel very firmly. But if Israel commits more and more war crimes in Gaza and kills thousands and thousands of civilians, then you're going to have trouble. I mean, look at the arrests in Capitol Hill. They arrested last night 300 people who were protesting, and most of them were Jewish Americans against what they call as they're calling for a ceasefire. So there is a lot of anger in the West also against it. It's not just one-sided. While the leaders are one-sided, the public is not one-sided. So I'm not sure that without a rapid movement on the two-state solution, which is going to be very difficult because while Israel is willing to bomb civilians in Gaza, I don't think they can use force to evacuate the settlers from West Bank to create a state. So, I'm really stumped. We can go back and talk about the two-state solution, but to actually implement the two-state solution, I don't think that the Israeli government or the U.S. has a political will. I don't know whether you remember the violence between the Israeli forces and the settlers when Gaza was evacuated. And Gaza has no biblical value, but the West Bank has all these biblical reasons why Israel wants to expand to it. So there will be a lot of Christian Zionists in the United States who will also be opposed to ending the settlement process in West Bank. So I don't know. The United States allowing the expansion of the settlements has been one of the biggest problems for the possibility of creating a two-state solution. And without creating a two-state solution, I don't know how you can.
Let me ask you this. Yeah. Let me ask you this finally. In terms of Prime Minister Netanyahu, what do you see as his future here? He right now, of course, Israelis rallying in terms of the actions that are being taken militarily, but a number of Israelis are now saying, when this is over, there will be a reckoning with him. What do you make of that?
Well, the man was destroying Israeli democracy. He was basically, in order to not go to jail, this corrupt man who should be in jail right now, the guy that Joe Biden went and hugged, the man that Joe Biden went and hugged should have been in prison by now. This man was destroying the capacity of the judiciary to hold him accountable. So he was destroying Israeli democracy in order to save himself from going to jail. That is what he was doing, and Hamas has come and given him an opportunity to relieve himself. The kind of thing, Hamas's attack, besides being brutal and inhuman, is also profoundly stupid because it has given a lifeline to Netanyahu. But let me tell you, the Israeli citizens are very, very smart. I've listened to Ehud Olmert, who was critical of this. They want this man to resign. They demanded a unified government, which they temporarily have. But the reckoning is going to be very serious on two levels. See, Netanyahu still had electoral appeal, and he was winning elections because he was the tough guy who could keep Israelis safe. And because he could keep Israelis safe, his little criminal activities and his side hustles were being tolerated by some people, and they were even willing to let him destroy Israeli democracy so that he could keep them safe and allow the West Bank expansion of the settlements and annexation to go forward. That is the deal they made. But now the Israelis are so shocked that so-called Mr. Security is not able to provide security. Netanyahu was prime minister when Hamas pulled off this attacked Israel from the sea, from the land, from air. And the violence continued for 6 hours gone before the Israeli Defense Forces got into action. So the whole country was available to Hamas fighters for 6 hours to do whatever they wanted. I suspect even Hamas must have been shocked by its ability to do whatever it wanted to do. So the reckoning is going to be, okay, you're no more Mr. Security, so you cannot save us and you did not protect us. Yes, you went and killed a lot of Gazans. Anybody can do that. You have tanks and F-16s and they have nothing to come back with to defend themselves. There is no Iron Dome in Gaza or something like that. But you can't defend us, you can't keep us safe, and now you want to destroy our democracy? I think lots of people are going to be very unhappy. But don't forget the hostages. About 150 of the 200-plus hostages are Israelis. And the families of the hostages are not happy with the way he is going about this. They want him to first get the hostages released before he goes around with his war-mongering. But if in the war, either Hamas kills them or the hostages die because of this indiscriminate bombing, there will be a further problem with it. And you know what? The picture of Joe Biden hugging Netanyahu will be very, very useful for the coming elections in November in the U.S. itself. Biden thinks that will help him win, but I have a feeling that could be a reason why he would lose. One final comment. If you have listened to Kirby, the national security spokesperson, a week or two ago when he was asked about the U.S. commitment to Ukraine, he said that we will support, the same refrain, right? We will support as whatever it takes for as long as it takes. But now, recently, he talked about that we are at the end of the rope, which means that it is quite possible that the U.S. might not be able to send ammunition and weapons and supplies and money to both Ukraine as well as Israel. When Biden was asked this question, he said, we are America, we can do all of this. People are handling this liberal left media are being so gentle with Biden, it's ridiculous. They should have immediately asked him, so where was America when you gave up Afghanistan to the Taliban? This assumption that the United States has resources and capabilities to fight multiple wars endlessly all over the planet, really, then we should have also continued to stay in Afghanistan and kept the Taliban out of power. There are lots of rumors out there, and I can't confirm this, and I apologize for spreading a rumor, but there is a rumor that some of the weapons may have filtered in from Afghanistan to Gaza, the weapons that the U.S. left behind. Now, I don't know how that is possible, and if there is any cooperation. Taliban has not shown any inclination to get involved in this issue. But the point is that there are limits to U.S. capabilities, and believe me, with the chaos that we have in Congress, and with Biden with approval ratings at 40%, with Americans thinking that the country is going in the wrong direction, nearly 70% Americans think that the country is going in the wrong direction, I don't think Joe Biden has the mandate to take America into another endless war anywhere in the world.
We've been speaking with Muqtedar Khan. He's a professor at the University of Delaware, and we appreciate you taking the time to talk with us this afternoon.
Thank you very much, Don.
You're listening to Delmarva Today. This is Don Rush.
Delmarva Today with Don Rush.